Welcome to the Am I Hunting Podcast. This episode, again, we're diving into the upcoming spring seasons and what to gear up for. All right, welcome to the Am I Hunting Podcast. Thank you again for tuning in. We are in the middle of April right now, and it just feels like we're in just kind of a holding pattern of all the things that are coming up over the next few weeks in regards to different activities and seasons that are going to be opening up and opportunities. So, the two big things that we've got coming up, of course, is turkey season. It's going to be opening up here next weekend. And so here in Michigan, starting the 22nd, is the season opener. And then again, it's going to run through different seasons till the end of May. And again, we're kind of in the same time frame where a lot of other states have either already opened up or be opening up the same time frame as us. So everyone's kind of in that same mindset right now for turkey season, essentially. And then also several of the fishing seasons will be opening up in the next couple weeks as well. I know I'm getting pretty excited in regards to that. Looking forward to being able to get the boat out and take my youngest daughter out fishing. And I've had a couple opportunities to go out already and do a little bit of pre-fishing of some of the areas that I'm hoping to be able to target here in the next few weeks. But before we get into the topic for the day, let's go ahead and head on over to the old Conservation News Desk for a couple of stories and updates. All right, so for this first bit of stories is an update on some apparently new gun regulation that has come through for the state. These are ones that I really wasn't even tracking. I know that I had highlighted a couple back on episode 58 of ones that I had known about. These are ones that I just weren't on my radar, and apparently they've just been signed into law this past week. So this first one is Senate Bill 79. Now this one is essentially, they've dubbed it basically the Safe Storage Act, where basically it's basically under law now that you're required to keep any firearms basically stored in a locked or secured manner, basically to ensure that a minor can't get a hold of it and use it. So basically, this is a stating that a firearm that's not currently being utilized or in your possession must be secured with some form of safety device or secured in some manner. The next one that goes hand in hand with that is Senate Bill 80. This is basically just the criminal classification or penal code for if you do not secure that firearm. Essentially what it comes down to is that if you do not properly store your firearm according to Senate Bill 79, then you are subject to any, criminal charges if that firearm is used to harm anyone, or basically if that firearm is, within a position, or if a minor is caught in possession of that firearm and you are found to have not been properly stored, then you are held criminally liable. And they break this down. So basically, failure to store a firearm resulting in injury, failure to store a firearm resulting in serious impairment of bodily function, and failure to store a firearm resulting in death. Again, I highly encourage you to read through them yourself to see exactly what these penalties are. Next one is Senate Bill 81. Now, this is one I actually am in favor of. So basically, what this is a short-term bill to basically to have any type of firearm safety device or storage or any type of secure firearm storage, that they're going to be essentially, that these items are going to be tax exempt essentially over the next year. So basically, beginning 90 days after the effective date, which again it got signed in this month, up until December 31st of 2024, Any type of firearm safety device is exempt from otherwise provided subdivision. So basically, like any type of trigger lock or anything like that. And then any device that was installed a firearm designed to prevent firearm from being operated without first deactivating the device. Gun safe, gun cases, lock boxes, and other devices designed with light material used to prevent access to firearm. So again, this is a good thing to actually have in law. Again, I'm not quite sure why they have only a cutoff date or have a cutoff date of 2024 or at the end of 2024. You would think that this would be something that you would want to have prolonged. Now I'm sure it's one of the things where they're just trying to promote it short term, but I'm sure they're looking at they want those tax dollars from those items. So I'm assuming that's why they have that cutoff date, because it doesn't make much sense if the idea is for safety that they would have that they put a cutoff date or an end date of that, of this classification. So this next one is House Bill number 4138. This one is essentially a universal background check / gun registry bill, basically covering the fact that now any firearm that's going to be purchased must have an application and be granted a license for purchase. So again, this kind of falls into kind of the typical points of a universal background check, where basically, again, any firearm being purchased, you must submit an application for and be granted a license to be able to purchase that firearm. And the license will, of course, have the basically a description, and I'm assuming probably serial numbers and everything like that of the firearm that you're being purchased. So it follows the typical background check, but they add a registry portion of it. Now, again, it gets a little bit in the weeds, where basically you have to have a license to be able to buy any firearm. That includes not just the pistols, but also any long gun. Basically anything over 26 inches in length falls under a different category. Now, you still have to get a license for that, but then it gets into a little bit of the weeds when you get further down into it, where it's a little unclear on if you are still going to have to follow the same process that you would for a pistol, where you have to take it to your local law enforcement and basically submit paperwork with them so they know that you have it. They for most of the bill, it goes over talking firearm, and then partway through it, they transition and they talk about they're using the word pistol. But they don't really make it clear on, once you've got the license for that long gun, on where that information goes or who it has to be submitted with. At least when reading through it, I didn't find anything significant once you've got the license for your rifle or shotgun, as to if you have to submit that with anyone, or if the dealer is submitting that with anyone as well. But I'd imagine, based on the wording of it, that it is being tracked or recorded in some form of database. I'm sure of it. Certainly, if anyone that has read this law, or has previous work with it, or is a dealer or anything like that, maybe they can let me know or make a correction here for me, where maybe that I'm either missing something or I'm looking too much into it here. So these ones here have all been passed they've gone through the both the state House and Senate, and the governor has signed off on these bills. Now there's another one that I want to highlight, that is House Bill 4145. This is essentially to give it a better classification, it's a red flag law. So basically, if you're deemed we'll use their terminology here. This act may be cited as Extreme Risk Protection Order Act. So basically, if you are deemed a potential extreme risk, then you could be subject to having your firearms confiscated. basically until you can prove that you are no longer a risk. Unfortunately, it's one of those things that you think that it's not going to, it wouldn't hold up in any type of legal sense, but they are proceeding with it. So basically, anyone that's a family member or guardian or healthcare provider, mental health professional, the police department, basically anyone that works within public safety. Who else we got here? Yep, public safety department, law enforcement officer. And again, basically, they basically have to give a reasonable argument that you may be maybe a threat. It even goes so far as to, even if you even may not necessarily even have committed a crime, if you even get into an altercation where you make any type of threat to an individual, you could be subject to this law. So again, this is something you want to read through yourself, but unfortunately, based on our current breakdown of our government, I don't see anything that's really going to slow this down outside of public outcry, really. So again, this one has passed through the House, but again, it's got to go through the Senate as well as make it through the governor's desk, which I don't see. Both those areas are probably going to pass it, but hopefully there's something that can slow this down. And I did forget this one here. So this is House Bill 4142. This goes in conjunction with House Bill 4138. Basically, the House Bill for 4142. So this one covers the basically the penalties and the legal ramifications if you violate if you violate House Bill 4138, on what the legal ramifications are. And then just give a quick update on two bills that I highlighted back on episode 58. This is House Bill number 6544. This one is the assault weapons ban. This one is still in committee right now, so I'm actually kind of surprised that this is still kind of sitting in committee and hasn't made much progress. And then also House Bill 6546. This one is the open carry law, basically banning open carry of any long guns or rifles or shotguns. Again, this one's still in committee as well, so no progress is made on any of these two. But again, those other ones have made it through the House, have made it through the Senate, and the governor has signed off on them. All right, so that's it for these legal bills and gun bills that are, certainly not any good news for any outdoorsmen, except for maybe the one about being able to get some tax break when it comes to buying like a gun safe or storage cabinets or gun cases. That one is probably the only one that I've gone through so far that actually makes any sense to incentivize people being safe with firearms, other than just penalizing and taking guns away. So let's get into a more fun story and a more upbeat story. So this one comes from realtree.com. This story has made its rounds through social media, and probably even has come across your news feed, or you may have seen this already. But it's a fun story, it's a cute story, and it's a story about a massive buck. So 3-year-old finds monster deadhead buck in Ohio. So in the part of the next header goes, when Rhett Boucher and his grandfather went out to gather firewood, they had no idea the 3-year-old shed hunter would find one of the biggest deadheads in Ohio's history. So to give you an idea, this 3-year-old are out. Again, these are outdoors, an outdoors family that go a lot of shed hunting and hunting in general. Spend a lot of time in the outdoors. So this kid was no stranger to going shed hunting and knowing what to look for. So basically, they were out gathering firewood, and Rhett was just kind of putzing around, kicking through the grass, and stumbled upon this giant buck that had passed within a month's time. Now, this buck's gross score comes to 276 and 4/8 inches. So basically, the story goes that little Rhett stumbles upon this buck and starts yelling for his grandpa to come see. And immediately, as the grandpa approaches, starts seeing the antlers sticking up. Calls Rhett's dad. He comes out, and everyone is just shocked at the size of the rack. Now, the story goes on that Rhett is not quite as impressed with the rack right away, because he's looking at a dead deer skull that's missing its eyes and probably parts of its skin and everything like that. So basically missing its face. So after he kind of gets past the shock of seeing basically a deer, missing part of his face, then realizes just how big the antlers are. So basically they called to get it scored, and basically it's made it into the records books as the 6th largest non-typical for the state. Again, it falls under the category of a found trophy. But one of the cool thing is that Rhett's dad has put Rhett's name on the records books. So anytime you look up that buck, it's going to have Rhett's name on it as the founder of that buck. So massive deer, comes out to a 23-point buck. And it actually, oddly enough, comes very close to having an even score on either side. So after measuring, the buck ended up with a mass 126 and 5/8 inches on the left beam and 128 and 5/8 on the right. So a 2-inch difference, and still as a non-typical. So it's amazing, just the sheer number of points and how evenly that actually came out to for score-wise between the left and right side. So again, this is marked as the 6th largest non-typical for the state. So amazing find. So fun story. Cute little kid that stumbled upon a massive deer. So good on him. Good to see that he's getting plenty of publicity on it. Hopefully that he'll one day be able to, harvest a buck that can be just as memorable as this for him. All right, so yeah, fun little story about Rhett. Congrats on him for stumbling upon just a absolute giant of a deer. And unfortunately, again, for the Michigan, we are on a trend of we're going to see a lot of gun regulation come through over the next few years, I'm afraid to say. So not good news on the gun front, but a great story for Mr. Rhett. So let's start getting into the topic at hand when it comes to what's coming up over the next few weeks. Again, the big one is turkey hunting season. It's going to be, well, let's just say I've heard of a lot of people that are quite eager about it, and I've talked with people that are kind of meh about it. Right now we're looking at, kind of a little bit of the same trend as last year, where some people I've talked to are seeing lots of birds, in their travels and as they're scouting. And I've heard of people that really aren't seeing much of anything. For me, I'm kind of more on haven't seen much of anything, at least in the area that I'm, traveling quite a bit. I have seen a few, hens, kind of cruising, kind of solo, really. And then I've seen a few, couple times out in the field, kind of that midday stuff. But nothing like I have seen in the past, where, basically it would be a rarity not to see a turkey on the side of the road or in a field doing their thing, really. So it looks like it kind of depends on just what your area is and kind of what habitat or terrain or the number of birds are in your area on what you're seeing, really. So basically, again, I've picked up a tag for the second season, which again I think is a little bit telling of the number of people that may or may not be hunting this year. Usually, that first and second season, especially for this area, they fill up pretty quickly, and there's very, at least in my experience of looking into it, they usually don't come across where there's leftover tags, especially for that second season. And if there are a few, there's not many, and they go pretty quickly. But this year, again, I've looked at it, a couple weeks ago, and there was still a couple thousand tags left over. And then I waited a week, pulled it back up again because I was actually going to buy a tag. And then, sure enough, there's still over 2,000 tags available. So I don't know if that's, telling of what the kind of the mindset of is for individuals that the turkeys just aren't there, so they're really not that interested in going out still, or I don't know. It's kind of too early to tell as to why the turkey sale or turkey tags are down. As it stands right now, again, second season is still going to be hopefully pretty well action packed with a lot of the breeding going on, and Tom's hopefully being pretty aggressive and doing a ton of cruising, and a lot of the birds looking or cruising, trying to find hens and whatnot. So hopefully things go well. I know I've got a friend that is going to be kind of doing his first turkey hunt for the year. So he's actually very excited to be able to hopefully get his kids out and hunt. So he's actually going to probably be borrowing a couple of decoys from me and in my blind, so he can basically use a crossbow with his kids and hunt their kind of small partial in their kind of in their back field and back of their property there. So I'm hopeful that they can have some success. And he said that they've got turkeys in the area, but they've been hanging on the out on the neighbors. So he was kind of picking my brain today about essentially how to draw those turkeys in, talking about calling, which again, calling is good to get them going. You can get them fired up. Again, you got to keep in mind that for nature that the hens are just supposed to go to the tom. So calling may not be enough to call a tom all the way into you. That's why I'm a huge advocate for using some form of decoy. It draws their attention. Again, turkeys are very visual, so if they see what looks to be other turkeys out there, it may draw them in. I typically like to run at least a hen with a jake. Basically that hen is kind of what those toms are looking for. And if they see another tom or a jake posted up with it, it may infuriate them or make them want to come in and either try to claim that hen or push off that jake or that tom decoy that you got to be able to breed that hen. So again, I like to use if I had to pick either between having a call and a decoy, I would probably take the decoy over a call, especially if you're in a area where you can't really go and kind of go after the turkey. Now, if you're in like a big public land area and you have a lot of room to be able to move around, maybe if you're going to do some bit more run and gun, maybe calling would be more advantageous or more useful to you because you're a little bit more mobile. You can just go off the vocalizations and try to cut off that turkey or try to draw them in that way. But if you're kind of more stationary, decoy I think is where you want to go with that. And again, I would love the fact of love the opportunity to get a turkey with a bow, but at this point, again, I guess my investment into it and my confidence of how good to be able to draw in a turkey or have an opportunity at turkey is still relatively low. So I'm gonna go out with a shotgun, hedge my bets on if I can get a turkey within range. I'm more apt to be able to harvest it just by having a more lethal weapon with me there. So we'll see what happens over the next couple of weeks on what my motivation is when it comes to turkey hunting this year. Again, last year I bought a tag and never ended up going out. Basically, the couple days I had, I opted to go out fishing instead. But this year, we'll see what happens. Hopefully, I can, get some motivation to give it a shot this year, especially since I've got second season and it's only for a week. So I might put a bit of a fire underneath me to try to get after them a little bit more than in years past, I should say. And then the next big thing is this is probably why I'm kind of wishy-washy on turkey hunting this year, is because I am far more motivated to go out and do some fishing this year. So basically I'm looking forward to really the big seasons coming up. The trout and salmon is going to be opening up, pike season, walleye. Those are the big ones that I'm really excited about. I actually went out just a few days ago out to the Platte River to kind of check out some of the spots and kind of do some, just kind of get some practice in of doing a little bit of fishing. Certainly there's still some of the seasons are open. The salmon's open in that stream, and then of course you can always do catch and release for some of the trout. So I went and tried my hand at it, and basically was down at the lower end of the Platte, down towards closer to Lake Michigan, and it was really it was a good day. I didn't see or didn't catch any salmon or trout down there. I really actually didn't see any in the holes. I did end up seeing a lot of pike up in the shallows, and certainly they're in the middle of their spawn. So there's, I don't know, probably 10, 12 just massive females. We're looking at 30 to 36 inches, and then of course they're being hounded and surrounded by a bunch of smaller males, but definitely those big females are up in those shallows, doing their spawn. So certainly they were very much preoccupied with what they were doing. They certainly were not in any mood to eat. Even some of those in the shallows, they were very quick to swim off and get away from any type of movement along shore. So they're pretty skittish. They definitely wanted to be left alone. Also ran into some smallmouth there. Again, they weren't really, at least not for the bead setup that I was using. It definitely didn't seem like they were interested in it. Some of the smaller fish kind of chased the bobber around a little bit, but that's about it. But the smallmouth were up in there. They were just kind of hanging out. They looked like they were probably getting pretty close to wanting to spawn as well. And then the one thing that was really interesting is that there was basically a big log jam, and I could see a fish down at the corner of this log jam. It looked like a good sized fish. So I did a couple of casts, floated that bead by it a few times. Basically after like about the third or fourth cast, was able to basically kind of get his attention a little bit, and it started to drift away from that log jam a little bit. Ended up hooking into it. Of course, as soon as you hook into it, the fish immediately turned, tried to get into the log jam, had to fight around getting over a couple logs and pulling it away from those log jams so it didn't get all tangled up in that. Probably it was a pretty good fight. It was, I don't know, probably took me 4 or 5 minutes to be able to pull this fish in. Come to find out, as I'm getting it up, and realize that it basically it wasn't a fish I expected to see. So I ended up pulling up on shore to be able to get the hook out of it, and I took a couple pictures and taking a look at this fish and realized it was a walleye. This is one of the first times I've ever seen a walleye in the Platte River, especially this far down. It's just a fish I never encountered before, much less hooked it and brought one in. Ended up taking a couple pictures of it. I actually was kind of shocked of it, and at first I wasn't entirely sure of what I was looking at. I thought it was a walleye, but again, having not encountered this fish before, in this part of the river especially, I texted a buddy of mine who's much more of a walleye guy than me, and he confirmed, yep, that's a walleye. And he actually, based on the pictures I showed him, he estimated it was probably about a 7-pounder. So It's kind of exciting to have caught a fish I wasn't expecting to or even targeting for the day. It was kind of bittersweet to catch that fish and then have to turn around and release it as walleye season is not quite open here, especially for our area. So it was kind of it was fun to have caught that fish, but it kind of stung a little bit to have to release that fish, especially seeing as how that was by far the largest walleye I've ever caught. So, but it was a good catch. I was a little nervous. Once I got the fish back in the water, and it took almost 5 to 10 minutes for that fish to recover. Apparently, she was pretty wore out from the fight and the time it took me to get the hook out. So yeah, it took basically standing in the water, just basically trying to keep the fish out of the current so it didn't get pulled away. After holding the fish in a bit, got it into a little bit more of the current. Fish eventually did take off, headed back into the log jam, and then I was able to move on. But so certainly a fun catch. Wasn't what I was really looking for, especially seeing as how it wasn't one that I could keep. So over the next couple weeks, especially once the general season opens up, going to be hitting the Platte River some more, try some different areas, move upstream a little bit, and hope that I can kind of get into some more fish. This is probably year 2 of me really trying my hand at fishing the rivers. I've always been fishing the lakes and whatnot. So this is something new for me. So I'm still kind of learning, kind of the areas and the timing, and really the techniques too. So right now I'm still just running more or less just the little bead. I think it's somewhere between the 8 to 12 millimeter. I think. Or maybe 8 to 10. I don't even remember from when I rigged it up last year. So, but we'll see how much longer that keeps my focus, especially once we hit into May. Some of the other seasons are going to open up, and I'm going to be targeting some much more fish that are kind of more in my wheelhouse, or I have a little more confidence in at going after. So. And then, the next big thing is doing habitat work still. I mean, everything is starting to green up. Even all the grasses are coming up. The winter food plot is starting to green back up again. So a lot of those winter plants are starting to green up, starting to fill in from the winter. Again, that's going to be my base for planting into the spring. So when I do my spring/summer food plot/cover crop, that's going to be kind of my base, my thatch for when I terminate that. My dad and I also just went out. We planted a couple more apple trees. So we've got I think 7 apple trees out there now. They're all kind of in different stages. We actually had one last year develop some apples. They basically only got to about maybe cherry size, but it did produce for the first time, so that's encouraging. And then we've got a lot of other trees too that are starting to really get established, starting to get some size on them. So here probably in the next few years we'll probably have several apple trees developing some soft mass around the food plot. Basically, hopefully to draw more deer, give more food throughout the year, and this kind of the idea is really just to make it a whitetail mecca. Again, I did some more cuttings in the hardwoods and cutting down some of the poplar trees and kind of thickening it up, making some bedding areas. Hopefully, deer will utilize them just to draw them in a little bit more onto the property, give them more bedding opportunities. More structure, more cover, making them feel more secure and safe in there. Then the next big step will be to, again, take down some of the invasive honeysuckle and autumn olive. A little bit of those plants are not necessarily a bad thing. They do provide some food, some cover for some animals. Again, the honeysuckle, with the berries that it produces, It's not a very nutritious berry even, for especially for birds and grouse and what or for grouse and other birds and whatnot. So again, the goal is to try to transition to more more a native plant or a native fruit bearing plant or berry, you know something that's going to supplement, or you know what am I saying here, something that's going to be a native replacement of that invasive honeysuckle. So over the next couple of weeks, we're going to be going in there, cutting a lot of those that honeysuckle and autumn olive out, and then also spraying with a herbicide on the stump to prevent any type of shoots from coming up, basically killing the plant outright. It's going to be one of those things where we're never going to get rid of the honeysuckle or autumn olive on the farm. There's just too much of it, and there's too much of it on the adjacent properties as well. So you're never going to fully get rid of it. The idea is to not let it become that invasive, problem where it's overtaking a lot of your natural plants, and basically making it to where those areas on your property are not as well utilized, or beneficial to wildlife. So again, here in the next couple of weeks, I'm going to highlight exactly what the plan is, how we go about going after these invasive species, and kind of what plants we're looking at to replace that. Because again, if you have an area that's very very thick with either the honeysuckle or autumn olive, and you clear that out, it's going to change the landscape quite a bit. And basically, if that was the only thing that was really in the area and you take it all out, then you leave basically nothing. So you've essentially cleared the plate, even of the, even if it was a plant that was not necessarily that beneficial, it did provide some benefit. So if you're gonna do it removal of those invasive species, keep that in mind. That if it's too big of an area, or if there's nothing really in the area that can kind of sustain that loss of cover, or that loss of really of that structure, then you may have a bit of a ecological desert for a little bit, until everything can kind of grow back in and kind of fill in after you've done that removal. So keep that in mind as well. But that's really it for what I've got going on in my mindset for the next few weeks. Again, it kind of feels like we're kind of sitting here kind of waiting on that storm that's kind of brewing for the things to come. Again, things are going to get really starting over the next few weeks with the different seasons opening up, and then the mindset of going into basically for the summer and getting the summer prep done. I mean, talk with even a couple of my buddies, starting to get their trail cameras put out, starting to do some more scouting. It's really going to be where anyone who's a whitetail fanatic or enthusiast is really starting to get their mind going, start thinking ahead for the upcoming season. I even saw a post not too long ago where it was something like only 26 more Mondays until opening day. So it's just kind of funny to think about. Yeah, the season's going to be here before we know it. It seems so far away, but by the time you think about it, and next time that you're trying to get prepared, you're going to realize that you've missed out on some opportunities to be able to get yourself prepared. It always feels like you don't get enough done beforehand. So that's always something I keep in the back of my head. Is always knowing that it's not as far away as I think it is. So all right, well, we're gonna wrap it up with that. Again, there's gonna be some more updates coming up. Hopefully a lot more stories of potential success, and we'll get into a little bit more of that habitat work again. That's a big focus of mine, especially during the summer months, of trying to improve the habitat and improve chances and the opportunities for to get a deer during deer season. So, but that's it for this one. So as always, get out there, be safe, and have fun.